Imagine an American military unit so secret that even other U.S. soldiers had no idea they existed. A unit that went to war without guns, without tanks, and sometimes without backup. Their mission? Not to fight, but to trick the Nazis so hard that entire German divisions would retreat without firing a single shot. And get this, they used inflatable tanks, fake radio chatter, Hollywood sound effects, and even fashion designers to win battles. This is the story of the Ghost Army, the most genius, most bizarre, and most underrated American heroes of World War II. So, where did this crazy idea even come from? Let's go back to 1944. After D-Day, the U.S. military had a massive problem. First, Germany had way more soldiers than the Allies expected. Second, every single move the U.S. made was being watched by German spies and reconnaissance planes. And third, one wrong move could cost thousands of American lives. The stakes were incredibly high, so the U.S. came up with a radical solution. They created a totally classified, top-secret unit, the 23rd Headquarters Special Troops. You and I know them as the Ghost Army. Their job was to pretend to be entire American divisions using props and trickery, drawing enemy fire away from real troops. Think of them as a massive mobile stage production designed to fool the German army. And who did they recruit for this bizarre mission? Not hardened soldiers, but artists, actors, sound engineers, and designers. The U.S. literally sent a bunch of creatives to fight a world war. Now, let's meet the artists who defeated an army. These weren't your typical hardcore soldiers. They were creative thinkers, problem solvers, and masters of illusion. But don't let that fool you. They were often on the front lines, sometimes just a few hundred yards from the enemy, with no real weapons to defend themselves. Their creativity, their ability to think outside the box, was their greatest weapon. And that creativity ended up saving thousands of American lives. It was an audacious gamble that paid off in ways no one could have imagined. The Ghost Army used a massive toolset of illusions, but nothing is more iconic than their inflatable Sherman tanks. Yes, really, inflatable tanks. These weren't just party decorations. They were life-sized rubber decoys that looked completely real from the air. A German pilot flying overhead would look down, see what looked like 200 American tanks massing for an attack, and radio back, "Damn, the Americans are bringing in a full armored division. We need to back off." But on the ground, the reality was comical. A single one of these tanks weighed only about 90 pounds. You could literally pick one up and move it around with just a few guys, or as the legend goes, with just your pinky finger. They also had inflatable jeeps, inflatable artillery cannons, and dummy airplanes. They'd even create fake supply trucks and camps to complete the illusion. Everything was meticulously designed to look real from the sky, but it was all just air and rubber. It was a brilliant, low-tech solution to a high-stakes problem. Now, here's where things get really wild. It wasn't just about what the Germans could see. It was also about what they could hear. The Ghost Army pioneered a form of psychological warfare using sound. They teamed up with engineers from Bell Labs to create fake audio recordings of troop movements. We're talking about the sounds of tanks rolling, engines revving, soldiers building bridges, and officers shouting orders. Then, they would haul massive, powerful speakers into the fields and forests of France and Germany and blast these recordings at full volume. These speakers were so powerful, the sounds could be heard up to 15 miles away. Imagine being a German soldier, hiding in a trench in the dead of night, and suddenly you hear the unmistakable sound of an entire armored division moving into position right next to you. The clanking of tank treads, the roar of truck engines, the sounds of hundreds of men setting up camp. You'd be terrified. You'd report it up the chain of command, and none of it was real. It was straight-up Hollywood-style sound effects, deployed on the battlefields of Europe in 1944. On top of the visual and sonic deception, They also mastered the art of radio trickery. In World War II, every U.S. division had its own unique radio fingerprint. This was a combination of how fast their operators sent Morse code, the specific slang they used, their conversational quirks, and even the types of errors they commonly made. German intelligence teams were listening to these radio signals 24/7, trying to track American troop movements. So the Ghost Army's radio experts became actors. They would study the radio fingerprints of a real division for weeks, learning their patterns like an actor studies a script. Then, when that real division needed to move secretly to another part of the front, the Ghost Army would stay behind and impersonate them over the airwaves. They'd send fake messages, mimic their exact style, and make the Germans believe the division was still right where they thought it was. It was the 1940s equivalent of catfishing, and they were catfishing the entire Nazi intelligence apparatus with radio waves. One of their biggest and most successful deceptions was a mission called Operation Brest, which took place in France. The real U.S. 6th Armored Division, a powerful fighting force, needed to secretly disengage from the front line and rush to a different, more critical battlefield. The problem was, if the Germans realized the 6th Armored was gone, they would immediately attack the now weakened American line. So the Ghost Army stepped in. For an entire week, this small unit of 1,100 men pretended to be the entire 6th Armored Division. They set up over 200 inflatable tanks in convincing positions. They created fake camps, complete with fake laundry lines to make it look lived in. They drove a few real trucks around in circles to kick up dust and simulate convoys. They broadcast the 6th Armored specific radio chatter, and at night they played the sounds of tanks and troops on their giant speakers. The Germans watched from their positions. Their reconnaissance planes flew overhead, and they completely bought it. They believed a full American armored division was still there, so they held back their forces. That incredible piece of theater saved thousands of American lives and allowed the real 6th Armored to succeed in its actual mission. But their most dangerous mission came during Germany's final, desperate offensive, the Battle of the Bulge. The situation was critical. The American lines were stretched thin, and a breakthrough by the Germans could have been catastrophic. The Ghost Army was called in to perform one of their most daring bluffs. Their job was to fill a massive 75-mile gap in the American front line. This was no joke. If their deception was discovered, they would be overrun, and countless U.S. troops could be trapped and wiped out. With incredible courage, they got to work. They simulated the arrival of 2 full American divisions. They set up fake troop buildups, created illusions of motor convoys moving at night with clever use of lights, and even simulated the construction of a pontoon bridge. They used every trick in their book inflatable tanks, sonic deception, and radio mimicry. They successfully fooled the German 18th Army Corps, diverting them away from the real, vulnerable U.S. divisions. By drawing the German attack towards their Phantom Army, the Ghost Army helped blunt the German offensive and shorten the war, all without firing a single significant shot. So, what happened to the Ghost Army after the war? Well, for over 50 years, their entire story was classified as top secret. These men went home, but they couldn't tell anyone what they did. They received no medals, no awards, no public recognition for their bravery and ingenuity. They just blended back into civilian life, their incredible contributions a secret they had to keep. It wasn't until 2013 that the U.S. government finally declassified their work, and the full story began to emerge. And it took even longer for them to get the honor they deserved. Only in 2022 did the men of the Ghost Army finally receive the Congressional Gold Medal, one of the nation's highest civilian honors. The story of the Ghost Army is a powerful reminder that wars aren't just won with firepower. They're also won with creativity, art, intelligence, and bold imagination. These men were heroes of a different kind, and their legacy is one that every American should know and be proud of. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to subscribe for more incredible tales from World War II.